Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim floated in the zero-gravity lab of the research ship Stellar Dawn, watching microscopic alien cells divide under his microscope. The samples came from a distant planet they had visited last month. Each cell told a story about life in the universe, and Hyun-Woo loved reading those stories. He had been studying alien life forms for 12 years now. At 35, he was one of the best xenobiologists in human space. The Stellar Dawn was his home, carrying him and 43 other scientists from star to star. They looked for new life, new knowledge, new hope for humanity's future among the stars. Hyun-Woo, come look at this, called Dr. Elena Vasquez from across the lab. She was pointing at her computer screen, which showed a strange energy reading. From their long-range sensors, Hyun-Woo pushed himself over to her workstation. The screen displayed unusual patterns of energy moving toward their ship. The patterns were too organized to be natural phenomena, too precise to be random. How far away? Hyun-Woo asked. 3 hours, maybe less, moving fast. Elena's voice carried. Worry. Captain wants all senior staff on the bridge. The bridge of the Stellar Dawn buzzed with nervous energy when Hyun-Woo arrived. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center, her dark eyes fixed on the main screen. The approaching ships were now visible as bright dots against the black of space. Valthyran design, said Commander Walsh, the ship's tactical officer. Military class. 3 heavy cruisers and at least 6 fighters. Hyun-Woo felt his stomach drop. Everyone in human space knew about the Valthyrans. They were an old alien empire that saw other species as inferior. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Humans had been lucky so far. Most contact with Valthyrans had been brief and far from human colonies. Can we run? Captain Rodriguez asked. Not fast enough, Walsh replied. They'll catch us in 30 minutes. Send a distress signal to Earth Command, the captain ordered. Full spectrum broadcast. Make sure they know what happened to us. Hyun-Woo watched the enemy ships grow larger on the screen. The Stellar Dawn was a science vessel, not a warship. They had only basic shields and no real weapons. Against 3 Valthyran cruisers, they stood no chance. The first attack came without warning. Energy bolts slammed into the Stellar Dawns. Shields lighting up the bridge with red emergency lights. The ship shook like a child's toy in an earthquake. Shields at 60%, Walsh reported. Hull breach on deck 4. More energy bolts followed. Each hit made the ship shake harder. Sparks flew from control panels. The lights flickered and went dark for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. They're not trying to destroy. U.S., Walsh said, studying his readings. These are precision shots. They want to disable us, not kill us. That thought scared Hyun-Woo more than death would have. Valthyrans were known for keeping prisoners. What they did to those prisoners was worse than a quick death in space. Shields failing, Walsh announced. Weapons systems offline. Engine room reports main drive is down. Through the bridge windows, Hyun-Woo could see the Valthyran ships closing in. They were sleek and dark, like deadly fish in the ocean of space. Their hulls gleamed with an evil beauty that made his skin crawl. A new voice filled the bridge, speaking in heavily accented English through the communication system. The words were cold and emotionless. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Lower your remaining shields and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the death of your crew. Captain Rodriguez looked around the bridge at her officers. Hyun-Woo saw the defeat in her eyes. She knew they had no choice. Lower shields, she ordered quietly. All hands, prepare for boarding. Follow surrender protocols. The Valthyran boarding ships attached to the Stellar Dawn like parasites. Hyun-Woo heard the cutting tools working through the hull. Soon, armed aliens would pour into their ship. He thought about the data in his computer. 12 years of research on alien life forms, information about human colonies and trade routes, knowledge that could help enemies find and attack human settlements. He began deleting files as fast as his fingers could move. The airlock doors exploded inward. Valtharan soldiers poured onto the bridge, their weapons ready. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces looked almost human, but their eyes were completely black, like deep holes in space. The leader pointed at Captain Rodriguez with one of his forehands. "You are the commander?" "I am Captain Rodriguez of the research vessel Stellar." "Dawn, we are a peaceful science mission. We have no weapons or military value." The Valthyran leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "All humans have military value. You will be questioned." His black eyes moved across the bridge and stopped on Haiyan Wu. "That one, the one with the data terminals. Bring him." 2 soldiers grabbed Haiyan Wu's arms. Their grip was strong, much stronger than human hands. He tried to pull away, but they held him easily. "Wait," Captain Rodriguez said. "He's just a scientist. He studies plants and microorganisms. He has no military information." The Valthyran leader walked closer to Haiyan Wu. His black eyes seemed to look right through him. "Your computer systems contain detailed star charts," the alien said. "Colony locations, trade routes, defense patterns. This human has access to all of it." Haiyan Wu realized his mistake. His research had taken him to dozens of human worlds. His computer files contained navigation data for every place he had visited. In the wrong hands, that information could guide attacks on human colonies. "Take him to the transport," the leader ordered. "Commander Velther will want to question this one personally." As the soldiers dragged him away, Haiyan Wu heard Captain Rodriguez shouting behind him. "He's a civilian. He has rights under galactic law." The Valthyran leader's cold laughter followed Haiyan Wu down the corridor. "Humans have no rights, only uses." The transport ship was dark and cold. Haiyan Wu was thrown into a small cell with walls that seemed to absorb light. The floor was hard metal that hurt his knees when he fell. A force field hummed across the cell opening, trapping him inside Dot as the transport pulled away from the Stellar. Dawn, Haiyan Wu watched his home for 12 years disappear into the darkness. He did not know if his friends were alive or dead. He did not know where the aliens were taking him. He only knew that his life as a peaceful scientist was over. The stars outside looked different now. Instead of points of light promising discovery and wonder, they seemed like cold, distant eyes watching his journey into darkness. Whatever waited for him at the end of this trip, Haiyan Wu knew it would test everything he thought he knew about himself. The transport jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars became lines of light stretching into infinity. Haiyan Wu closed his eyes and tried to remember the face of his sister back on Earth. He wondered if he would ever see her again. The cell walls were made of some kind of metal that hurt to touch. Haiyan Wu had been in this place for 3 months now, though it was hard to tell time without windows or clocks. The guards brought food twice each day, so he counted meals too. Tracked the passing days. Detention facility Omega-7 was worse than anything he had imagined. The building seemed designed to crush hope. Every surface was gray or black. The air tasted stale and metallic. Strange sounds echoed through the corridors at all hours. Screams, machinery, and voices speaking in alien languages. On his first day, they had brought him before Interrogator Prime Kexival. The Valthyran was even taller than the soldiers, with scars covering his gray skin. His 4 arms moved independently, as if each had its own mind. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "Human, you will tell me everything about your species' military installations. Kexovel had said. Colony locations, defense systems, fleet positions. You will give me this information willingly, or I will take it from your mind piece by piece. Hyun Woo had tried to explain that he was just a scientist. He studied alien plants and microorganisms. He had no knowledge of military secrets. But Kexovel did not believe him. Your computer contained navigation data for 47 human worlds. The interrogator had said, trade routes, supply lines, population centers. This information has military value. You will explain each location in detail. That was when the real nightmare began. The Valtherans had torture devices that human minds could barely understand. Neural disruptors sent waves of pain directly into the brain, bypassing the body entirely. Memory extractors forced old traumas to replay over and over in perfect detail. Isolation chambers removed all sight, sound, and touch, leaving a person alone with only their thoughts. They used all of these on Hyun Woo. Day after day, week after week, month after month. But something strange happened. Something the Valthyrans had never seen before. Hyun Woo did not break at first. Kexovel thought it was just stubbornness. All species showed some resistance at the beginning. But as weeks turned into months, the interrogator began to worry. His methods had broken beings from civilizations thousands of years old. Why was this young human still refusing to talk? During the neural disruptor sessions, Hyun Woo learned to focus his mind on other things. He remembered his childhood in Seoul, playing in the park with his sister. He recalled his first day at university, full of excitement about studying life. Among the stars, he thought about the microscopic creatures he had observed, each one perfectly adapted to survive in impossible conditions. If tiny microorganisms could survive in the vacuum of space, surely he could survive this. The memory extractor was harder to fight. It forced him to relive his worst experiences. The day his parents died in a transport accident. The time he failed his first important exam and thought his career was over. Every moment of fear, sadness, and pain from his entire life. But even then, Hyun Woo found strength. Each painful memory also contained something good. His parents' death had brought him closer to his sister. Failing that exam had taught him to work harder and become a better scientist. Pain was part of life, but it was not the end of life. Isolation chamber was perhaps the worst torture. Alone in complete darkness and silence, with no way to know if minutes or hours were passing. Some prisoners went insane after just a few days in isolation. Hyun Woo lasted 3 weeks. During those long, dark hours, he exercised his mind. He recited Korean poetry his grandmother had taught him. He solved complex mathematical problems in his head. He planned research projects he would conduct if he ever escaped. He built entire worlds in his imagination, complete with new forms of life. Most importantly, he observed Hyun Woo was still a scientist, even in this horrible place. He studied his captors the same way he had once studied alien microorganisms. He watched how they moved, how they spoke, how they reacted to different situations. The guards who brought his food were always nervous around him now. They had heard about the human who would not break, and it made them uncomfortable. Some of them looked at him with what might have been respect. Kexovel was becoming frustrated. The interrogator had never failed before, and his reputation was suffering. Other Valtheran officers whispered about his inability to break one simple human. During questioning sessions, Hyun Woo could see anger in the alien's black eyes. "What are you?" Kexovel demanded during one particularly brutal session. No organic mind can resist neural disruption for this long. "Are you some kind of machine? A biological computer?" "I am just a man who studies life," Hyun Woo replied calmly. "Life finds a way to survive, even in the worst conditions. That is what life does." Sub-Commander Thexira, Keksaval's assistant began asking questions that worried the interrogator. "Perhaps we have underestimated this species," she said, after watching another failed session. "If one human can resist our methods for 3 months, what does that say about humans in general?" Keksaval grew more desperate. He brought in new devices, more powerful neural disruptors, deeper memory probes. Nothing worked. If anything, Haiyan Wu seemed to be getting stronger. During the sessions, Haiyan Wu began to notice patterns in the torture. Devices. The neural disruptor had a rhythm, a cycle that repeated every few minutes. The memory extractor connected to his brain through specific nerve pathways. The isolation chamber used magnetic fields to block his senses. He was learning how their technology worked. More importantly, he was learning how his captors thought. Valthyrans believed that all other species were weak and primitive. They had built their entire empire on that belief. But what happened to that belief when faced with something they could not break? Haiyan Wu saw fear growing in Keksaval's eyes. Not fear of him personally, but fear of what he represented. If humans could resist Valthyran torture methods, maybe. Humans were not as primitive as the Empire believed. Maybe other species were not as weak as they seemed. "You are spreading doubt among my staff," Keksaval accused him one day. "Some of them are beginning to question our methods." "I am not spreading anything," Haiyan Wu said. "I am just being myself." If that creates doubt, perhaps the doubt was already there. That night, alone in his cell, Haiyan Wu allowed himself a small smile. It was his first smile in 3 months. He was still a prisoner, still suffering daily torture, still far from home. But something important had changed. He was no longer the victim in this relationship. The Valthyrans had tried to break him, but they had failed. In failing, they had revealed their own weakness. They needed other species to be inferior. They needed their victims to break quickly and completely. When that did not happen, their entire worldview began to crack. Haiyan Wu could see that crack growing wider each day. Soon, it would be wide enough for him to escape through. But escape was not enough anymore. These aliens had hurt too many innocent people. They had built their empire on the suffering of others. Someone needed to show the galaxy that the mighty Valthyran Empire could be defeated. Someone needed to show them what happened when they chose the wrong human to break. Haiyan Wu began to plan. 6 months in hell had taught Haiyan Wu many things. He knew that Guard Unit 7 always checked his cell at exactly the same time each day. He knew that the neural disruptor needed 30 seconds to charge between uses. He knew that Sub-Commander Dexira was starting to question everything her people believed about other species. Most importantly, he knew that Keksaval was going insane. The failure to break Haiyan Wu had become an obsession for the Interrogator Prime. Other officers whispered behind his back. Some even suggested that maybe humans were more dangerous than they had thought. Keksaval could not accept this possibility. His entire identity was built on being the alien who could break anyone. The morning of his escape, Haiyan Wu was brought to the interrogation chamber as usual. Keksaval was waiting with a new device, something Haiyan Wu had never seen before. It looked like a metal crown connected to pulsing cables. "This is a complete neural mapper," Keksaval said, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. "It will copy your entire brain pattern and transfer it to our computers. We will have every memory, every thought, every secret you have ever known." Haiyan Wu said nothing. He had learned that silence made his captors more nervous than any words could. "The process will destroy your mind," Keksaval continued. "You will live, but you will be empty. A shell. Perhaps that is better than what you are now." The metal crown was placed on Haiyan Wu's head. Cables connected to ports in the interrogation chair. Keksaval moved to the control panel, his 4 hands dancing over the alien symbols. "Last chance, human. Tell me what I want to know." and I will make your death quick. Haiyan Wu looked directly into Kexival's black eyes. You first. The interrogator snarled and activated the neural napper. Energy flowed through the cables and into the metal crown. Haiyan Wu felt the device trying to push into his mind, trying to copy his thoughts and memories. But 6 months of neural disruptor torture had taught him how to fight back against alien technology. Instead of resisting the neural mapper's probe, he guided it. He showed it what he wanted it to see, led it where he wanted it to go. The device was designed to work in one direction, from brain to computer. Haiyan Wu reversed the flow. Instead of copying his memories, the neural napper began copying the interrogation chamber's computer system directly into his brain. In seconds, he had access to security codes, facility layouts, guard schedules, and system controls. But more importantly, he could now control the neural mapper itself. Kexival screamed as his own device turned against him. The neural mapper, still connected to the main computer, began flooding the interrogator's mind with every torture session he had ever conducted. Every scream of pain he had caused, every mind he had broken, every life he had destroyed, all of it poured into his consciousness at once. The alien fell to the floor, clutching his head with all 4 hands. Stop it, stop it. This is what you gave to others, Haiyan Wu said calmly as he removed the metal crown from his head. How does it feel? Through the facility's computer system, he could see everything. Guard positions, security systems, weapon locations, and most importantly, the other prisoners. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all suffering the same torture he had endured. Haiyan Wu stood up from the interrogation chair for the first time in months. His legs were weak from lack of exercise, but his mind was sharp and focused. He looked down at Kexival, who was now curled in a ball on the floor, whimpering like a child. Sleep, Haiyan Wu said, and triggered a neural command through the facility's computer system. Kexival instantly went unconscious. The interrogation chamber door was locked, but Haiyan Wu now had access to all the security codes. It opened with a soft hiss. The corridor beyond was empty. He had timed this perfectly between guard shifts. Through the computer system, he could see Sub-Commander Thexira in her office 3 levels up. She was reading reports about prisoner resistance incidents throughout the facility. Haiyan Wu's example had inspired others to fight back against their captors. He made his way through the facility's corridors, avoiding guards and security cameras. The knowledge downloaded from the computer system showed him every safe path, every blind spot, every weakness in their defenses. The first guards he encountered were checking on a cell block full of alien prisoners. They never saw him coming. Using techniques learned from months of studying Valtheran behavior, Haiyan Wu disabled them silently and took their weapons. The weapons were designed for Valtheran hands, with 4 trigger mechanisms. But Haiyan Wu's scientific mind quickly figured out how to modify them for human use. Within minutes, he was armed and dangerous. More guards came running when their colleagues failed to report in. They found their weapons turned against them by someone who had learned to think like they did. Haiyan Wu had studied their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears. He used all of that knowledge against them. The facility's alarm system activated, filling the corridors with red light and wailing sirens. Emergency blast doors began sealing throughout the building. But Haiyan Wu was already inside the security control center, using his access to the main computer to override every safety system. Sub-Commander Thexira's voice echoed through the yell. Facilities communication system. All units, we have a prisoner escape in progress. The human subject has somehow gained access to our computer networks. Seal all sections and report to your emergency positions. Haiyan Wu accessed the communication system and broadcast his own message. Attention all prisoners. Your guards' weapons can be turned against them. Their technology can be used to free you. Fight back. Show them that no species is inferior. Throughout the facility, prisoners who had given up hope suddenly found new strength. They overwhelmed their guards, took their weapons, and began fighting for their freedom. What had started as one human's escape was becoming a full rebellion. Vexira appeared in the security control center, her weapon drawn. But she hesitated when she saw Hyun Woo sitting calmly at the main computer terminal. "You are not what we expected," she said. "No," Hyun Woo agreed. "We never are. My people believed that humans were primitive, that all species except ours were weak and easily controlled. Your people were wrong about many things." Vexira lowered her weapon. "What you have done here will change everything. Word of this will spread throughout our empire. Other species will know that resistance is possible." That was the plan. Through the facility's sensors, Hyun Woo could see Commander Velther's ships approaching. The same alien who had captured him 6 months ago was returning with reinforcements. But it was too late. The damage was already done. "Will you kill me?" Vexira asked. Hyun Woo looked at her with the same calm expression he had maintained through months of torture. "That depends. Are you willing to learn?" The facility shook as Velther's ships began their attack. But they were attacking a building full of freed prisoners, armed with their own weapons and led by someone who understood their technology better than they did. The hunters had become the hunted, and Hyun Woo was just getting started. Commander Velther's assault ships surrounded detention facility Omega-7 like metal vultures circling wounded prey. Through the facility's external cameras, Hyun Woo watched the same alien who had captured him preparing to retake his prison. But this was no longer the same place Velther had left behind 6 months ago. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the facility," reported the commander's tactical officer. "Their defensive systems appear to be ... modified." Velther's 4 arms moved nervously over his command chair controls. "Modified? How?" "Unknown, sir. The weapon signatures don't match standard Valthyran technology." Inside the facility, Hyun Woo smiled as he worked at the main computer terminal. During his months of captivity, he had not just studied Valthyran psychology and behavior. He had also learned their technology inside and out. Now he was using that knowledge to turn their own weapons against them. The facility's defensive turrets had been reprogrammed with new targeting algorithms. Instead of protecting the building from outside attack, they were now designed to disable ships without destroying them. Hyun Woo wanted prisoners, not corpses. Sub-Commander Vexira stood beside him, watching the tactical display. She had chosen to help him rather than fight him. "Velther has brought 3 heavy cruisers and 12 fighters. Even with our modifications, we cannot defeat that much firepower. We don't need to defeat them," Hyun Woo said. "We just need to break their confidence." He activated the facility's main communication array and began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message he sent would reach not just Velther's ships, but every Valtheran vessel within 50 light years. "This is Dr. Hyun Woo Kim, formerly prisoner 477 Alpha at detention facility Omega-7. 6 months ago, you captured me because you believed I was weak. You tortured me because you believed I would break. You are wrong about both things." On Velther's command ship, the bridge crew listened in stunned silence as the human they had captured continued his broadcast. "I have spent 6 months learning everything about your people, your technology, your tactics, your fears. I know how your ships work, how your weapons function, how your society operates. And I know your greatest weakness." Hyun Woo paused, letting the tension build across the communication channels. "You need us to be inferior. You need other species to be weak and primitive. Without that belief, your entire empire falls apart." But what happens when you discover that you were wrong? What happens when the primitive species turns out to be stronger than you are? Valther slammed one of his 4 fists on his command. Chair, cut that transmission. Jam all frequencies. We're trying, sir, but they're using our own communication systems against us. The signal is being amplified through every Valthyran relay station in the sector. The broadcast continued now, reaching hundreds of star systems throughout Valthyran space. The beings you have imprisoned in this facility represent 43 different species. For months, you have tortured them to break their spirits and steal their knowledge. But torture reveals more about the torturer than the victim. And what it has revealed about you is fear. On distant worlds throughout the Valthyran Empire, enslaved species listen to the humans' words. On mining colonies, in forced labor camps, in cities where aliens served as second-class citizens, hope began. To grow, you fear that other species might be equal to you. You fear that your empire is built on lies rather than strength. You fear that if your victims ever fought back together, you would lose everything. Jian Wu's words were spreading like wildfire through the Galactic Communication Network. Valthyran commanders were receiving reports of uprisings on dozens of worlds. Species that had been passive for centuries were suddenly refusing to obey orders. Sir, Valther's communications officer reported, we're getting distress calls from 17 different systems. There are revolts breaking out across the Empire. Valther's black eyes burned with rage. This was supposed to be a simple prisoner recovery mission. Instead, it was becoming a disaster that might destroy everything his people had built. Begin the assault, he ordered. I want that facility destroyed and everyone inside it dead. The attack began with a barrage of energy weapons aimed at the facility's main structure. But the modified defensive systems responded with precision strikes of their own. One by one, Valther's ships found their weapons disabled, their engines damaged, their systems failing. How is this possible? Valther demanded. Those are our own weapons. They shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. Haiyan Wu's voice came through the communication system again, this time speaking directly to the attacking fleet. I know your shield frequencies because I helped design them. Every torture session taught me more about your technology. Every neural scan gave me deeper access to your computer systems. You created the perfect spy and didn't even realize it. Inside the facility, freed prisoners from dozens of species worked together to operate the defensive systems. Beings who had been enemies in the outside galaxy were now united by their shared suffering and their common hope for freedom. Vexira watched in amazement. As species after species demonstrated abilities the Valthyrans had never suspected. We always saw them as primitive, she said quietly. But look at how quickly they adapted to our technology. Intelligence isn't about technology, Haiyan Wu replied. It's about the ability to learn and adapt. Your people forgot that. One by one, Valther's ships were disabled and boarded by teams of freed prisoners. The crews that had come to recapture escapees instead found themselves captured. The weapons they had brought to intimidate their victims were turned against them. Valther's own command ship was the last to fall. As boarding parties made their way through his vessel, the commander found himself retreating to his private chambers. The proud Valthyran, who had once looked down on other species as inferior, was now hiding like a frightened child. When Haiyan Wu finally came for him, Valther was crouched behind his desk, still clutching his weapon with all four hands. Stay back, the alien commander shouted. I am Valther of the Valthyran Empire. You will show me proper respect. Haiyan Wu looked at the cowering alien with the same calm expression he had maintained through months of torture. Respect is earned, not demanded. You are nothing. A primitive species from a primitive world. We ruled the galaxy when your people were still learning to make fire. And yet here we are, Hyan Wu said simply. The weapon fell from Velther's trembling hands. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. The primitive human he had, captured 6 months ago, was now his captor. The inferior species he had dismissed was now holding him prisoner. What do you want? Velther whispered. Hyan Wu thought about all the beings who had suffered in Valthyran prisons, all the species that had been enslaved or destroyed by this empire, all the pain that had been inflicted in the name of superiority. I want you to learn, he said, the same way I learned. In a cell, with time to think about what you've done to others. Through the ship's communication system, reports continued to arrive from across Valthyran space. The empire that had taken centuries to build was crumbling in a matter of hours. The broadcast from a single human prisoner had inspired revolts on hundreds of worlds. Velther looked up at his captor with something that might have been understanding beginning to grow in his black eyes. You planned this from the beginning. No, Hyan Wu said. You planned this when you decided that other species were worthless. You planned this when you built an empire on suffering. You planned this when you chose to torture innocents instead of learning from them. The Valthyran Empire was falling, but Hyan Wu felt no joy in its destruction. Too many beings had died to reach this point. Too much pain had been inflicted, on all sides. But from the ruins of the old empire, something new could be built. Something based on cooperation instead of domination. Something that recognized the value and strength of all species. The real work was just beginning. 2 weeks after the fall of detention facility Omega-7, the first human rescue ships arrived at the coordinates Hyan Wu had transmitted across the galaxy. Captain So-Young Park of the UES Retribution stared through her bridge windows at what had once been an impregnable Valthyran prison. The facility was still standing, but it looked completely different. Instead of the dark, threatening structure it had been, colorful banners now flew from its towers. Ships from dozens of different species were docked at its ports. What had been a symbol of oppression had become a beacon of hope. Are you seeing this? Asked Commander Tae-Ho Lee from the intelligence ship beside her. Our long-range scans show no Valthyran defensive positions. No weapons targeting us. It's like they're inviting us in. Captain Park had served in the human fleet for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Open a communication channel to the facility. The main screen lit up with the image of a human man sitting in what looked like a command center. He appeared calm and healthy, though there were lines around his eyes that spoke of recent hardship. Captain Park, Commander Lee, welcome to Free Station Omega-7, the man said. I am Dr. Hyan Wu Kim. I believe you're here to take me home. So-Young felt her breath catch. The entire human fleet had been searching for Dr. Kim since his research ship was attacked 6 months ago. Intelligence reports suggested he had been captured by Valthyrans and was probably dead. Dr. Kim, we're amazed to find you alive. What is your status? Are you being held prisoner? Hyan Wu's slight smile held secrets that would take hours to explain. Not anymore. In fact, I think you'll find that the situation has changed significantly since you left Earth. The docking process took several hours because of the number of ships requesting permission to board. Representatives from the Altarian Republic, the Centauri Trade Union, the Epsilon Collective, and dozens of other governments had all received Hyan Wu's broadcasts and come to see what was happening. When Captain Park finally made it to the facility's main conference room, she found herself in a meeting unlike any in galactic history. The room was filled with beings from species that had been enemies for centuries, all working together on what appeared to be some kind of massive coordination effort. Hyan Wu greeted her with a handshake and a tired but genuine smile. Thank you for coming so quickly. We have a lot of work to do. Dr. Kim, the reports we've been receiving... Are they true? Has the Valtheran Empire really collapsed? Not collapsed, Hyun-woo corrected. Transformed. The old empire built on domination and fear is gone. But the Valtheran people are still here, and many of them want to be part of building something better. He gestured to a tall, gray-skinned figure standing near the window. Captain Park recognized the alien as Valtheran, but this one was not wearing military armor or carrying weapons. This is Sub-Commander Thexira, formerly of the Valtheran Imperial Fleet. She has been instrumental in organizing the peaceful transition of power throughout their former territory. Thexira approached with the careful movements of someone still learning how to interact as an equal rather than a superior. Captain Park, I must apologize for the actions my people took against Dr. Kim and his crew. We were wrong about many things. The next few hours were filled with briefings that redefined everything the human fleet thought they knew about galactic politics. The Valtheran Empire had not been destroyed in a war. It had been transformed from within by the power of example. Hyun-woo's resistance to torture had inspired other prisoners to fight back. His broadcasts had reached enslaved populations throughout Valtheran space. His demonstration that the Empire's technology could be turned against itself had shown oppressed species that their captors were not invincible. The actual fighting lasted less than 3 days on most worlds, Commander Lee observed, studying the reports. This wasn't a military conquest. It was a psychological revolution. The most powerful weapon against tyranny is the realization that tyrants are not as strong as they pretend to be, Hyun-woo said. Once people understood that Valthyrans could be defeated, the Empire's foundation of fear crumbled. But liberation was just the beginning. Throughout former Valthyran space, newly freed worlds were struggling with basic questions of governance, trade, and defense. Species that had been enemies for generations were trying to learn how to cooperate. This is why we need your help, Hyun-woo continued. Humanity has experience with building peaceful coalitions between different groups. The United Earth Government, the Colonial Alliance, the Trade Federation. You've proven that cooperation works better than domination. Captain Park looked around the room at representatives from dozens of species, all looking to humanity for guidance. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. What about the Valthyran leadership, the ones who were responsible for the torture and oppression? Hyun-woo's expression grew more serious. They are being held in the same facilities where they once kept their prisoners, but not for revenge, for education. They need to understand what they did to others before they can be trusted to rejoin galactic society. He led her to a lower level of the facility, where the former interrogation chambers had been converted into something that looked more like classrooms than cells. Through reinforced windows, she could see Valtheran officers sitting in circles, with beings from other species, apparently engaged in some kind of discussion. This is Commander Velther, Hyun-woo said, indicating a tall Valthyran who was listening intently to a small, blue-skinned alien. He's the one who captured me 6 months ago. Now he's learning about the cultures and civilizations his empire tried to destroy. Captain Park watched the former commander nod respectfully as the blue alien spoke about her people's history. The arrogance and superiority that had once defined Valthyran officers was nowhere to be seen. Some of them will never change, Hyun-woo admitted, but others are genuinely trying to understand what they did wrong. Thexira is not the only one who has asked to help rebuild instead of just rule. The tour continued through laboratories where former Valthyran weapons were being converted into tools for exploration and construction. Medical facilities where alien doctors worked together to treat injuries caused by the Empire's violence. Communication centers where representatives from different worlds coordinated relief efforts. You've built something amazing here, Captain Park said. But can it last? Can species that have been enemies for centuries really learn to work together? Hyan Wu paused at a window overlooking the facility's main hangar. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked together, their crews working side by side to load supplies for relief missions. 6 months ago, I was just a scientist who studied alien microorganisms, he said. I never imagined I would be part of something like this. But crisis has a way of revealing what people are truly capable of. Over the following weeks, Captain Park and Commander Lee worked with Hyan Wu to establish what became known as the Resilience Institute. The facility that had once been used to break prisoners became a center for teaching psychological resistance techniques to all species. The Institute's motto, carved in dozens of languages above its main entrance, reflected everything Hyan Wu had learned during his captivity. They sought to break the human spirit, but discovered instead that it cannot be broken, only made stronger. Students came from across the galaxy to learn not just how to resist oppression, but how to build societies based on cooperation rather than domination. Former Valthyran officers studied alongside beings their empire had once enslaved. Trade. Routes that had once carried goods to feed an empire now carried knowledge to build a better future. Hyan Wu often stood in his office at the top of the facility, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so cold and hostile. His sister had visited from Earth, amazed at what her quiet brother had accomplished. Other members of the Stellar Dawn's crew, the few who had survived the initial attack, had come to see him transformed from a captured scientist into a leader of galactic change, but he still thought of himself as a scientist. The universe was full of life, and life always found a way to adapt and survive. Sometimes it took extreme conditions to reveal just how strong that life could be. The Valthyran Empire was gone, but something better had taken its place. Not another empire built on the domination of the weak, but a coalition founded on the strength that came from diversity and cooperation. And at the center of it all was a reminder that no matter how dark things seemed, no matter how hopeless a situation appeared, the spirit of life, human or otherwise, could never truly be broken, that it could only be made stronger.